Hello, hello. I can't see everyone. It's very bright up here. Thank you for the previous lectures. Very inspiring, actually, especially the first lecture. I'm a fan of the Marseille Tarot myself, so it's very, very inspiring to hear that information, that Ficino may have designed the tarot cards. Interesting. And the second speaker as well, I also was born in 1980, wherever you are, and so I get the millennial kind of / Gen X thing. It is a thing. So I'm going to introduce my talk today. It's The Art of Transforming the World, Tarot and the Future of Immersive Experience. But first, I'll just briefly introduce myself. I've got a company that's just recently set up called Astrolab Immersive, and I'm attempting to bring kind of meaningful, immersive experiences to the world, to the art world. My background is, originally I studied film at university, and I majored in avant-garde film and video. And after university, I had a few different roles where I was a music, audiovisual performer, an immersive event producer. I actually worked for Breaking Convention. There's a couple of representatives here from Breaking Convention in the UK. And I also did pest control, which is kind of a fun thing to do, especially when you come out of university fully qualified. And then in 2012, I became a professional tarot reader. And a lot of the information I'm going to speak to you about today was informed by the MA that I did in 2015 to 2019. I'm actually a terrible academic. That should have lasted 2 years, but I made it last 4 years. But it was an MA, an amazing MA in the UK, run by Angela Voss. Some of you may know her. It's an MA in Myth, Cosmology and the Sacred. So a lot of the info I'm going to speak about today is from that. And then during lockdown, I retrained in immersive storytelling because the event industry was pretty much decimated. So, and ultimately what I'm going to introduce to you is the ideas that I had around the tarot as an experience, which has formed now a virtual reality game called the Tarot Experience VR, which doesn't sound like a very imaginative title, but there was reasons why I called it that in my writing. So I just want to talk about very quickly, what is immersive and what do we mean when we mention the term immersive? So immersive is a metaphor, but essentially it really means the moment from which, 1 minute you may be standing on the shore, the next minute you would jump into the water and be immersed into a completely different environment. So that's what we're talking about. It's a metaphor to say that we're going to enter a completely different realm with as many of our senses as we can take with us. So what is immersive tech? You hear a lot of these umbrella terms. XR in particular is an umbrella term for extended reality. So it talks about all of these things that we hear, these acronyms like VR, AR, MR. We're swimming in these acronyms, right? Especially with the onset of AI. But augmented reality, as you can see there in the image, is when you use a physical device, a technical device, a phone or a tablet to view digital assets that are overlaid in the real world. This will probably become more and more prevalent. We suspect that what will happen, that people have glasses and you'll be able to walk around and see this stuff a little bit easier than holding your phone up in the future, which is scary. Mixed reality is sort of used more in the industry, where you have the virtual world and the real world linked together and you can interact with the two of them. So it's used in manufacturing and it's used in medical industry to perform operations, actually. And then you have virtual realities, what I'm really interested in, which is a fully artificial environment, which takes your eyes, your ears, and some of your other senses into a completely digital space. And the reason why I sidestepped into this stuff, in my role as a immersive event producer, I was actually working on a project called the DAO Project. Is there anyone that remembers DAO in Berlin? Yeah, not many. Yeah. Anyway, so that's another story. But whilst I was doing that job, I went to a conference called Immersive Storytelling Experiences and listened to a lot of people present content around this new magical, amazing tech that's super fun, super interesting, right? But they all reported to have similar problems, which was how do we create meaningful narrative experiences that change and adapt to each person that engages with them? Because what these technologies represent is the loss of framing visually and the loss of framing in a narrative sense. So with my background as a tarot reader, while sitting in that lecture, I realised that this is exactly what the tarot does. The tarot, every person that comes to the tarot in its form and function changes and adapts to meet the person in a very deeply meaningful way. So I decided that this could be a possible answer to the storytelling problem in the immersive arts sector, and decided to write my dissertation 4 years later and call it the title of the talk today. So I'm just going to go through some of the content of that talk. I'm going to speak really quickly. I'm a Gemini. I apologise. It may be super fast. So I'm going to dial into what I mean about the art of transforming the world. I'm going to dial down into what I mean about transformation. I'm going to talk about the world. And obviously the world, I'm really actually referring to the world card. I'm referring to the world as well that we live in, but also the world card at the end of the major arcana. So the art of transforming the world. And really I'm looking at, it's an interpretation of the tarot system in the context of this immersive technology and the immersive art sector. But there's a deeper problem. Why on earth are we doing this? Why have we created a piece of technology that we strap to our face and go somewhere completely different? What's that about? Does anyone know? It's really weird to me, and this is a deep problem. It's odd. But what you'll find when you sort of try to explore why we're doing this is some really interesting sort of themes that come up. And it's age-old cultural issues really around what virtual and illusory, subjective, objective, internal, external, true and false. That's still these same cultural sort of divisions that we experience today in society. And actually the key thing that you'll see through this is how much do we value our personal experience as a tool for navigating life, the arts, and anything really. It's a re-emergence, I would say, about a revaluing of our experience. It's what this stuff represents. So the art, what do I mean? So this is my first sort of hypothesis in the paper, which was talking about tarot as a storytelling experience. I find it really important that I'd love to give a tarot reading to someone like Richard Dawkins, someone that just doesn't believe and thinks it's a load of bollocks, I would love that opportunity, because I think if I could explain this to him, he might get it. Because I'm sure that Richard Dawkins is someone that enjoys cinema, he enjoys theatre. So whenever we engage with theatre or cinema, we have this willing suspension of disbelief, right? So we enter into a moment where we're not going, is this true, is this false? We're allowing ourselves to be swept along by the narrative. And I would say that we need to do that with, or users, to get the most value out of a tarot reading, should do that. We should approach the tarot experience, the experience of having a tarot reading, with a sort of willing suspension of disbelief, because it may touch you like great art does. And those ideas play out through Plato, Aristotle, and the kind of power of art to be either illusory or transcendent. John Dewey wrote in 1934 about art as experience. He could see this coming. A lot of people have seen these ideas coming, that we should actually view art and images and aim to have an experience of art. He was writing at a time aesthetically when people were just hanging images on walls, and it was about the objectification of art. And historically through the arts, we've had this really weird sort of need to immerse more and more and deeper in image worlds. It's an ever-increasing kind of desire to engage more deeply with images. And we see that really in the onset of virtual reality. We are now inside the images that we've created, essentially. So the question would be why? Why are we doing that? What's the pursuit behind it? And obviously within the tarot as well, you can reference the hero's journey. You know, I say that to anyone that comes for a tarot reading, that really essentially you're consulting the central myth or story of the tarot, which is that we're all heroes on our own journey to work out kind of who we really are. And this goes all the way back to like the chivalric kind of medieval period, well, before that to ancient Greece and ancient Rome, but the chivalric medieval period was that time when the tarot was birthed, you know, so we see knights, we see kings, we see these kind of chivalric ideas, and then obviously onto Joseph Campbell, who spoke about it particularly in comparative mythology and then later on in film. We love these stories, we need these stories, they help us reference essentially ourselves and place us in important narratives in our lives. This is kind of a interesting point. Got it hypertext, and it's really in the study of narrative that you see this, that there's been a pursuit, and an ever-increasing pursuit, to escape the tyranny of the author, right? So that the user can navigate story, and essentially be involved in the creation of the story and create their own story, right? So you see it sort of played out with choose your own adventure books. And what happens with hypertext is that hypertext, in order to escape this tyranny of the author, are made by multiple authors. This is exactly what the tarot is, right? 240 years, if you believe, dumb it. If you believe, dumb it, it's 240 years of attribution of esoteric philosophy. So how many authors are there of the tarot? There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, thousands, lots, right? So for me, this felt like tarot is a great medium to be speaking in this modern day. And then we have this idea of mythopoesis, where we get deeply involved in the story of our own lives, right? And that happens when we consult the tarot. The second point, transforming. Tarot as transformative gameplay. Look, I'm not going to sort of preach to the choir about this at all. This tarot sits firmly within the school of esoteric art, right? It's part of occult philosophy, and it's the reason why it works. The attribution of occult esoteric philosophers, of all the information that's sort of become a library behind these images, is down to esoteric thinkers, esoteric philosophers, occult philosophers over the years. This is the form of tarot. This is what gives it its power. But at the heart of it, and the heart of a lot of esotericism really is this idea of transmutation, that we're going to change ourselves somehow through this process. Sits very neatly within tarot, obviously. And then you talk about Carl Jung, his archetypal psychology, attributing the major arcana, the movement through the major arcana to his theory of archetypes. That really what we're doing when we consult the tarot, if we're on this process of individuation, we're revealing who we really are meant to be in the world. And it's the archetype of the self that is constantly calling us in some strange form of desire throughout our lives. And the sort of post-Jungian, James Hillman famously called it the acorn theory, right? That within every acorn is an image of the oak tree that it will become. So we're like that as well. We have an image of a sort of perfect identity that is calling us. And so this all plays out in tarot as well. And this is the idea of the process of individuation. And then we get narrative psychology as well, right? Because in my opinion, when you consult the tarot, you consult the stories of your past, you consult the stories of your present, and from those two places, you sort of create your future. So, but there's such a thing as false memories, right? So the past is a creative act. The story that we tell ourselves and to others who we are is a creative act, and those two things combine to create our future. So it's really fascinating if you look at tarot in this form of narrative creation, and also liberating, because we're involved in a co-creative process here of our life and potentially the world, as I'll speak about in a sec. There's also this element that tarot can be educational, and educational in the ancient Greek sense, in the Platonic sense, where the root for the word education is educare, to lead out, to initiate, to lead out of the cave. So we're referencing Plato's cave here, that you're born into ignorance and you lead yourself out. It's a proper form of initiation, potentially. There's a scholar called Ina Semetsky who talks about tarot being a metaphorical, informal school of everyday life. And she actually describes the archetypes, Carl Jung's archetypes, as a virtual reality that somewhere exists in the substructure of our mind. So obviously I found that super fascinating to come across. And then we start talking about therapy, really, because when you consult the tarot, you bring the unconscious into personal conscious awareness. And there's a process here that's similar to alchemy, where you're talking about shadow transmutation. And again, the kind of realigning you back towards the image of the self, the idealized self. And when it comes to gameplay, right, the history that tarot used to be a gameplay, the controversial history that tarot used to be gameplay, to me doesn't lessen it, because there's a really important function to play, and there's a very important function to game and gaming, and it's very popular in this day and age for a reason, I think. But what we really essentially do with the tarot is that we play a game of synchronicity with it. We ask it in a moment to speak to us and offer us a synchronistic kind of message, really. So the random function within tarot is also its transformative function. And so really, essentially, it's a true random number generator, which are used in consciousness experiments to prove that consciousness exists and has an impact beyond the body. But essentially, this is a true random number generator with deep meaning attached to it, right? It's a numerical system. And finally, the world, when I'm talking about the world in the title of The Art of Transforming the World, tarot as meaning-making device, it seems sort of fairly obvious to say, right? But again, to go back to, and I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, is the first speaker here. Can he pronounce Antoine Court de Gebelin again? The proper French, please again? Amazing, man. I've been getting it so wrong. Thank you. I apologise. But that moment at which he watched 3 or 4 women playing the tarot cards, and then had a symbolic moment of imagination where he went, this means way more than what I'm seeing here. You know, the interplay of images, the symbolism, and then he obviously wrote his essay. This is a statement that we can be involved in an active interpretation of the world, right? That the world is full of symbols and they're speaking to us. So I kind of believe that VR is a tool to potentially awaken symbolic consciousness in a similar fashion to psychedelic function, right? The psychedelic experience, I believe, is an initiation into symbolic consciousness. But what exists behind all of this is the cosmological idea that we live in a connected world. And that's displayed by the use of correspondences in the tarot, right? And so there's this re-emergent cosmology of connection. It's the idea of the Neoplatonic idea of the world soul that post-Enlightenment got put back inside of us, and it's become the sort of job of brilliant psychologists like Carl Jung to tease the soul back out of us. But essentially, maybe we can find this reconnection again to our own soul and also the soul of the world as it used to exist in previous cosmologies. And then this idea of experience and interactivity exists in VR, but let's say that it also exists in tarot, right? That we're talking about our primary experience and we're talking about the interactivity of the gameplay. That this is about a re-emergent idealism, right? Where the first person vantage point, our personal experience, is valued again, because post-Enlightenment it got thrown away. We mistrusted it, and I think we're at the tail end of that, because the Enlightenment is what's given us all this technology, but it feels like it's now asking us to look back in again. And so all of this stuff can help essentially bridge the divide that I just spoke about, post-Enlightenment, the meaning crisis, a potential re-enchantment again. And divination, I think, does that. There's this idea within the tarot that we're going to talk about the future, right? But the reality is, and in this kind of idea of future narratives, is that the future isn't set in this particular theory. And that the future is plural, it's nodal, it's multiple, meaning that we have choice. as to what is the outcome of our lives and what is the outcome of the world. So the future becomes a creative act. And then to go to this, get back to this idea again of the rebirth of the self and the world, and as Crowley did with the final card of the Major Arcana, Frieda Harris and Crowley, the reason why they changed it to the universe is because he's talking about universal consciousness, right? Beyond fear of death, potentially, and this maturation of the soul where we become connected, not just to the world, but to the universe. And that was an amazing idea, I think, that Crowley brought in. So to go back to the question, did we over-externalize ourselves post-enlightenment, where the technology and the push for technology and the searching that's led to has kind of reached the limit, right? Why are we not exploring space at the moment? Why are we not in spaceships? I would have thought the vision for 2023 would have been a bit more futuristic. But I think because we've reached the limit of our thinking, and that the technology now that's coming back with VR, the technology that's showing itself in VR and AI is actually showing us ourselves. It's holding up a mirror and it's saying, you forgot something here. And it's, in my opinion, a deeper, more fulfilled connection to self, whatever that is. So back to the immersive metaphor, it's a statement of, in my opinion, an emergent need to immerse ourselves into a deeper understanding of self. Right? So therefore, I feel like we need to fill these virtual worlds with transformative visual metaphors, which is, in my opinion, is exactly what the tarot is, and very much what needs to go into VR. Because ultimately, the metaphors we live by have the power to change us, right? The lead metaphor post-enlightenment was that life is a machine, the body is a machine, the planets are a machine. We're therefore on this sort of meaningless rock in space because everything's a machine. I think we need to change that. And to specifically speak about VR, we've created this perception hacking technology. It has two screens here. It has two speakers here. It hacks your ability to see in 3D. It hacks your perception, essentially. So why did we create this? Like, what are we doing with our own perception? And to me, it feels like there's an ethical responsibility. It's similar to that of a shaman, right, who uses psychedelics, another technology, to transport users to another realm. What are we looking for? Why are we going there? And more importantly, what do we want to come back with? So, in conclusion, I'm just going to read a couple of quotes from the conclusion from my essay of 2020 on this. So the vision of a connected universe which places humanity and the individual at its centre should be valued not for its literal truth, but for what is able to provide us metaphorically and symbolically. Such narratives which, if philosophically grasped, represent a universal narrative within which we are all participating. And if we live in a world of images where the first-person vantage point and our faculty of interpretation are valued, then such ideas become deeply important in the pursuit of a meaningful narrative experience to life, right, as well. To once again envision ourselves as part of a fundamentally connected world and universe, as opposed to a meaningless machine, represents an important shift of metaphor. If we are to liberate ourselves from the potential illusory power of images, which does go all the way back to Plato, both in virtual reality and in the world itself, then this process will likely rely on such a shift in cosmological and philosophical understanding. And the art of transforming the world is an art of transforming the metaphors, I'm repeating myself here, which we use to describe ourselves in life. What the Fool's Journey, housed in the tarot playing cards, represents is an important modern-day narrative system that points to a transcendent concept of the self and an image-based world full of meaning. If we are able to allow ourselves to trust our experience, to shift our metaphors, to engage with future narratives, then we face the possibility, inspired by the tarot system, of creating important immersive experiences that show us a glimpse of not only our true self, but a vision of the transformed world we wish to create, in the hope of averting the course of destruction which our culture seems to be hurtling towards. So back to the experience, and I've realised, because I thought I'd run out of time, I've left out some slides really that go into detail about what the team of people, myself and the team of people who were involved in creating this, have created. When I went to university, when I retrained in immersive storytelling, the two key features that I brought into VR were obviously the images themselves, but secondly, a true random number generator, right? Because a computer cannot be random. If you think about it, it cannot be random. It can only follow logical programming. So therefore, it cannot, in my opinion, efficiently do divination. Because the nature of... Well, that's actually a controversial point, but that's my opinion. In order to have true random, you have to bring a signal from nature. And that's actually used in the computer world for cyber security. So we used a true random number generator to actually generate the card press, the moment in the game where, in the experience where people press the button, it goes through a true random number generator, which is actually electrostatic interference in the atmosphere, in order to generate the bits and then the number and the cards. Like I said, tarot is a number system, so it fits really well into the computer world. But we have to bring in this natural signal in order to generate a potentially kind of divinatory point. So I'm going to try and play a trailer for it, if it works. Yeah.
Welcome, traveler. You have entered a sacred realm. In this place, you will unlock the wisdom and teachings of the tarot. The images you encounter here will speak directly to your life, to the truth of your being. Take a moment to clarify what aspect of your life requires attention, insight, and understanding. Travel well. Travel true. Your time here is short.
There you go. One of the key people that helped me create this is Jose Montemayor, who's actually going to be here presenting some other work. So that's a QR code. Actually, do another show of hands. Has anyone got a VR headset? Yay, more than I thought. What's that, about 3 or 4? It's not very popular just yet. Okay, so if you have got a VR headset, or if you're thinking about buying one, check out that QR code will take you to it will take you to the trailer, and it will take you to where you can kind of download that game. So the game itself is early kind of experiment, really. The whole thing's been an experiment. Ultimately, the future of it, I would love to work with other tarot deck creators to bring different cards into the game. The cards that are in the game are a deck that I've created myself. The landscape in which you sort of experience the cards is this sort of futuristic, retro-future kind of sacred geometric landscape. But in the future, I'd like to create different worlds. I'd like to work with different deck creators. And I'd really like to just bring the experience of tarot more into VR, because I think it's got a lot to offer, primarily, but also for the reasons that I've outlined in the previous part of my talk. I think it's important. I don't think we can just let zombie games and all the shoot 'em up stuff and all the other nefarious things that might appear in VR lead us down a different path. I firmly believe that we need to fill these digital worlds with important and significant metaphors, because the technology is very powerful. The technology has the power to change our consciousness, and we need to use it correctly. So, and it also just recently got nominated for a VR award. So it might win, it might not, but I think that's just industry recognition, just to say that hopefully I wasn't talking shit in my essay. That's it. Thank you.